Today, we'll discuss the full Beaver Moon on Monday, November 27th, 2023, 4 degrees Gemini. This means that the moon is passing or traveling through 4 degrees of the constellation Gemini, while the sun, which is directly opposite in the sky, since we are at the beginning of Sagittarius season, is traveling through 4 degrees of the constellation Sagittarius, with Mars close behind at 2 degrees Sagittarius. Full moons always involve an opposition between the sun, our collective soul purpose and mission, and the moon, our private emotional selves, which is what allows the moon to reflect the light of the sun. We are challenged to integrate two seemingly opposite and opposing energies. Watch for swings in either direction whenever oppositions are involved. In this case, watch for swings between mutable air Gemini and mutable fire Sagittarius as we attempt to attain balance. Moons always position the sun, representing our collective soul purpose, our egos, our core mission, pitted in opposition against the emotions and feelings of the moon, which can lead to conflict in interpersonal relationships. This is why oppositions tend to bring up external issues interpersonally, while squares trigger us on a more internal, personal level. Full moons are a time of completion and closure. They represent the end of a 6-month cycle for which the seeds were planted 6 months prior during the corresponding new moon. Seeds of intention that are coming into fruition right now were planted on or around June 18th, 2023, under the new moon, 26 degrees Gemini. The new moon in Gemini occurred very early on Sunday, June 18th, 2023. It was at 12:37 a.m. for those of you who are on Eastern Standard Time like me, and it featured an alignment of the Sun, Moon, and Juno, long-term commitments, 26 degrees Gemini, in the late degrees, that third final decan of Gemini. Look back through your journals, notebooks, planners, and photo library. See what was going on for you toward the end of June that may be coming full circle today. I'll share my personal connection and reflection later on in the video, so I encourage you to stick around to hear that. Let's rewind back to that alignment 26 degrees Gemini, that third final decan of Gemini. So that last third of Gemini is ruled by sub-planetary ruler Uranus. So yes, Mercury is still the planetary ruler of Gemini, but the sub-ruler, which is split into thirds for that third and final decan, is Uranus. And this is known for reason. Combination of the influences of Uranus and Mercury make this energy have high expectations, especially when it comes to intellect and mental stimulation. That is a requirement for anyone under this, especially this third of Gemini, to form any type of emotional or romantic bond. This indicates an underlying theme of communication. 26 degrees in degree astrology is a degree point that's associated with Taurus energy that answers to Venus and has everything to do with our finances, resources, our self-confidence, and how we define ourselves to be resourceful, to be able to provide for ourselves. In the sign of Gemini, we need to look to its ruler, Mercury, which was also in Gemini at 11 degrees. And in a supportive position, a sextile, 60-degree angle to Venus, exactly 11 degrees Leo. A major head versus heart balancing energy. Moon on June 18th, 2023, formed an almost exact square to Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces. Mercury was also forming a square to Saturn, which had just gone retrograde just hours before this new moon, while the new moon squared Neptune, similar to what we're seeing under this full moon, which I'll get into in a few moments. Mercury square Saturn brought opportunities to consciously face and work through where having too weak or too rigid of boundaries and other self-sabotaging patterns have led us to disempowering situations where we may be either vulnerable to be taken advantage of or inadvertently sabotaging or blocking opportunities for abundance, love, wealth when those opportunities show up due to not being able to receive them. We are facing ways where we've blocked our own abundance, our creativity, and intuition. Full moons that occur in the sign of Gemini usually highlight an emphasis on self-expression, communication, the media, journalism, community, siblings, neighbors, and important conversations can occur on or around the full moon. This is when our thoughts, our ideas come into fruition or manifest in our physical reality. Those seeds that we planted back in June, those ideas for projects have become projects that we are producing right before our eyes. Full moons can bring in major revelations, and in Gemini, this can be via the media or journalism or marketing. Any of those Gemini industries. Let's begin by diving into Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius is a masculine or pursuing, young, mutable, or adaptable fire sign that is ruled by the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is a benefic planet known for bestowing wisdom, expansion, and abundance. Sagittarius is the archer, the hunter with lofty ideals that loves the pursuit and the thrill of a chase. The glyph for Sagittarius is the pointed arrow of the archer. Glyph is said to depict the body part that Sagittarius actually rules, which is the part of the body from the knee pointed to the hip. Arrow is symbolic, pointed toward the higher self, higher ideal over or transcending over earthly materialism, the eagle. Let's talk a little more specifically about the first third of Sagittarius, the first decan, which is both ruled and sub-ruled by the planet Jupiter. The ruling constellation for this decan is the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, symbolizing victory or triumph over adversity. This energy pattern may be very familiar to those born between November 22nd and December 1st, which bestows one with lofty or high ideals and a wide range of interests. You may possess a love of knowledge, experiences, adventure, and freedom. We have both the Sun and Mars in close conjunction, so they're essentially fused together as we enter the energy of the full moon. The Sun, like we said, is what we're collectively embodying, our soul's collective purpose, our egoic selves, how we see ourselves. And during Sagittarius season, so from November 22nd until December 21st, with Mars there in the Sun's shadow, just following the Mars Cazimi rebirth or beginning of a new 26-month Mars cycle, I'll get into that in a moment, in the late degrees of Scorpio, which was on November 18th, Mars Cazimi. Mars and the Sun actually travel together from November 15th through the end of November 30th, 2023. So let's begin by diving into this Mars Cazimi on November 18th. The Mars Cazimi, or rebirth, like we said, was the start of the next 2-year, 26-month Mars cycle. Just prior to this Mars Cazimi on November 18th, Mars formed an exact square to Pluto, which brought us an earthquake in Afghanistan with 2,400 plus fatalities and an escalation in the Israel-Palestine conflict that resulted in 1,400 plus fatalities on this date. In the late degrees of Libra, this is all about social justice and equality because Mars represents the hero, the divine masculine, that pursuing young energy, the hero archetype, the hero's journey. What I'm referencing here is Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. This Mars full cycle is 26 months, which is just over or about 2 years, and it involves a Mars retrograde somewhere around the midpoint of each cycle. Since Mars is the ruler of the North Node, while the North Node is in Aries, the North Node of fate and destiny, which indicates the themes of the karmic lessons we'll collectively be experiencing, until early January 2025, we will pay attention to Mars and Mars's patterns. When a planet travels closely to the Sun, it's said to be combust or on fire, and Mars is already a fiery planet. So things are really starting to heat up. Mars rules are masculine, yang, pursuing energies, the energy applied when we want something. Mars also rules both Aries and Scorpio. So those with strong Aries and or Scorpio placements and Mars aspects will notice this more than others. Previous Mars cycle. This cycle began on October 7th, 2021, with an alignment of the Sun and the Mars, a Mars cazimi, at the midway point of Libra, 15 degrees, the constellation Libra. This second decan of Libra, which might be familiar to those of you born between October 3rd and October 13th, is ruled by both Venus and sub-ruler Uranus, which is the planet of the higher self, higher consciousness, our intellect. The blend of the influences of Uranus and Venus afford those born during or under the second decan of Libra, like myself, with a sharp mind and an equally serene, peaceful, and or charming personality. It's often the serene, charming personality that is looked at first, and they're completely blown away by the keen intellect hiding behind it. The Libra glyph, the scales of balance, represents the duality that often makes a Libra or a Gemini, sometimes even an Aquarius, feel like two different people. The second decan of Libra gifts these natives with an artistic radiance and an original style, matched with high ambition and a determination to succeed. Although independent, they still need companionship and love. Often, luck and abundance come through partnerships. If we think back to early October 2021, this is post-pandemic with Mercury about to retrograde through Capricorn, with Pluto forcing us all to reflect on late-stage capitalism. We knew that something needed to change, but we were not yet aware of how we could impact that change. April 2022. Something was seeded on or around April 4th, 2022. When we saw an alignment between Mars and Saturn at 22 degrees of Aquarius, with Jupiter and Neptune also aligned between 22 and 23 degrees of Pisces. That's right, the two planets that rule Pisces were aligned, both benefics in rulership, in their sign of rulership, aligned, a very rare event. This is approaching the midpoint in the Mars cycle, and I'll introduce some themes for that as I share a personal reflection of where I was back in April 2022. So back in April 2022, I did a lot more of talking about my goals than I spent time actually working on those goals. So that's at least one profound change I can share. So instead of dreaming about what we might do, instead of dreaming about what I one day might do to build a business, I sat in front of the camera and I started recording. At that time, I was in a management role working for Whole Foods, experiencing a lot of issues interpersonally within the dynamics of the team. There was a lot of gossip, there was a lot of bullying, there was a lot of harassment, and I was having a hard time both facing it and controlling it and squashing it. I ended up getting recruited, and although this opportunity presented itself and it was a nice opportunity, I'll admit I didn't thoroughly research this opportunity, and I saw it as a golden ticket to get out of the negativity and toxicity of that current circumstances. This is something that both Gemini and Sagittarius can be guilty of, because the second something gets toxic or icky feeling, it can have an urge to run. And what I didn't see in that moment was an opportunity to work through the challenges, that adversity, to level up in my leadership ability. Instead, I ran away from it and I took a different opportunity. Where were you experiencing challenges and limitations, Saturn, that inspired you to make a move from somewhere where you had previously felt comfortable? Forward to August 26th, 2022, this was the midway point in the Mars cycle and pre-Mars retrograde. This involved the first harsh square to Mars, with the Sun in the early degrees of Virgo at 3 degrees, with 3 degrees in degree astrology being associated with Gemini and Mercury. This put the Sun, aka our soul's collective purpose, in the first decan of Gemini, which is both ruled and sub-ruled by Mercury, our logical minds, giving a strong focus and emphasis on intellect and one's ability to analyze. We had this energy squaring off against Mars at 3 degrees of Gemini, which is highly adept at analyzing, with a natural ability to write and or speak to communicate, and juggle multiple responsibilities simultaneously. Both Mars in Gemini and Sun in Virgo answer to the ruling planet Mercury, which rules both Virgo and Gemini, which on this day was 0 degrees Libra. This first decan, or third of Libra, is both ruled and sub-ruled by Venus, gifting one with social charm, beauty, and grace as they magnetize others toward them, and they long for equal exchanges in those conversations and those relationships that they're forming. This energy, though, needs to watch for putting too much of their self-worth into the hands of others by needing to be liked and or approved and achieving goals through others. Retrograde from October 31st, 2022 until January 12th, 2023 through the sign of Gemini tested our strength, what's worth fighting for, investing our energy into versus what's not. The peak of this tension occurred about a year ago on December 7th, 2022, with the Sun in Sagittarius directly opposite Mars in Gemini. In the sign of Gemini, this brought tests to our ability to focus, to juggle multiple projects or ideas simultaneously, to communicate, our ability to focus, and our staying power. Mars in Gemini especially can struggle from shiny object syndrome. It's presented with many opportunities and can get overwhelmed by options. This retrograde began following a Mercury retrograde through Virgo and Libra and ended during another Mercury retrograde through Capricorn. So major reflection points for that ruling planet, Mercury. March 2023, on March 16th, 2023, a waning square began the phase of falling action for Mars and this 2-year Mars cycle. This was a time and forward to integrate what we had learned during that previous Mars retrograde about our eyes being bigger than our stomachs, by saying yes to too many things, by spreading ourselves too thin, burning the candle at both ends. These are all very common Mars and Gemini pitfalls where we really think we can do it all, but we risk overpromising and underdelivering because we really just can't realistically do it all. Our eyes can be bigger than our stomachs in this way. We're tired of talking about it. We're now ready to do something about it. Back to this Mars Cazimi. Fortune favors the bold with this transit. So we're feeling more daring to do something or to speak up about something, even though it may be difficult or make us feel uncomfortable or put us in a position where we feel like we are confronting. South Node Libra. Those who are willing to take action or initiative on something will be rewarded for their courage in the end. A combust Mars can be overzealous and it feels very heavy, so this energy may feel similar to what you saw under the eclipse 2 weeks prior. This Mars Cazimi happened in the third and final decan of Scorpio. Scorpio relies on a deep internal knowing. It's heightened intuition. The Mars Cazimi happening in the late degrees of Scorpio means that we're going to need to rely on our intuition, this deep internal knowing, prior to taking action on anything in the future. Mars, like we said again, is the planet of how we go after what we want. We all have a Mars sign. Mars, under this rebirth, will need to get in touch first and foremost with its intuitive body, its ability to discern information as it comes through, to act on impulse or gut feeling. That is what you're going to need to fine-tune first, moving forward into this next 26-month cycle. This third and final decan of Scorpio is sub-ruled by the moon, giving an added allure to the energy. People born in the final or third decan of Scorpio between November 12th and November 21st are at their best when dealing with groups of people and or working in the limelight or the public eye in some way. The ruling constellation for this last final third of Scorpio is Aquila, the eagle. There's that eagle again, whom the ancient Greeks believed to be the only creature capable of outstaring the sun. The eagle symbolizes our ability to transcend above and beyond earthly material limitations. Who is brave enough to take action to expose something that's been in the dark or shadow? We're exposing manipulations, abuses of power, corruption, gossip, etc. 26 degrees is a Taurus degree, which answers to Venus and relates to our values. 26 degrees is where the alignment of Mars and the Sun occurred. It relates to our values, resources, assets, our overall sense of security and stability. So we may see themes around money, finance, banking, food, and access to resources around this time. With Uranus and Jupiter coming into alignment, 22 degrees Taurus, in spring of 2024. We see that number 22 degrees appear again and again, and as we've mentioned in previous videos, 22 degrees in degree astrology is a master number. 22, associated with the sign and energy Capricorn. High ideals, high expectations, methodical, meticulous, great at climbing, laying foundations, consistent, hardworking. But 22 degrees is also the degree point in astrology that's associated with the death of a loved one. So we'll keep an eye on these alignments and transits that happen at 22 degrees. In a cazimi, the planet that is combust the sun is delivering a message. In this case, Mars is the star of the show. Mars relays a message, it dies, and like the phoenix, it's reborn and rises from the ashes stronger and more empowered, better than before. Mars rules that pursuing energy within all of us, yes, that yang energy, but it's also a malefic planet that delivers karma via injury, accident, illness, separation, war, violence, and death. When Mars and Uranus are in opposition to one another, both Mars and Uranus are linked to freedom and independence. So Mars opposite Uranus can signify a major kickback globally and universally against rules, regulations, or authority. Both Uranus and Mars are in fixed or set signs, at least at the time of this opposition. Mars is now in a mutable fire sign, where Taurus, where Uranus is, can be very set in its ways and stubborn as a fixed earth sign, and Scorpio, where Mars was during the opposition, can be very emotionally set or fixed in its feelings, holding on to things like resentment, far past what's healthy, as a fixed water sign. Mars is incredibly strong in Scorpio, and Uranus equally strong in Taurus, but also equally uncomfortable there, which can bring literal and metaphorical earthquakes. You may have noticed between the previous new moon in Scorpio video, where I said exactly this, Mars opposite Uranus, especially in the sign Uranus and Taurus, can bring literal and metaphorical earthquakes. Political, financial, stock market collapses, real estate crashes, bank closures, volcanic eruptions, explosive, hot, reactive, and intense outbursts of energy. Whenever this happens, so under the exact opposition and for the weeks following where we're still obviously experiencing the energy, when Mars was opposite Uranus, it's important to keep an open mind and to adapt to your changing circumstances. Change is the only constant. This is somebody as a North Node Aquarius, highly influenced by the planet Uranus, second decan Libra, sub-ruled by Uranus, ruled by Venus but sub-ruled by Uranus. Change is the only constant, and you can let go of any idea of control you have other than how you respond to change. That's really the only control we have. Opposition between Uranus and Mars can bring outbursts of anger, especially directed at those who either upset or wronged us in the past. We may experience unexpected attacks to our character from others. We may also experience unexpected or sudden run-ins, especially as we approach Venus aligning with the South Node in the late degrees of Libra. You can expect some karmic triggers, especially karmic relationships, past people, karmic patterns within interpersonal relationships, both at work, romantic, platonic, to come up as tests to mastery. We'll get into that a little bit deeper when we explore the aspects involved in this full moon, but this alignment happens just after the full moon, Monday, Tuesday, November 27th and 28th. Now that Mars is traveling in the sun's shadow, which can be high energy and aggressive, but in the sign of Sagittarius, we have a little bit of relief. The most likable traits for both Sun and Mars in Sagittarius energy patterns are their natural optimism, their fun energy to be around, they have natural leadership skills, and they're magnetizing. They tend to have really fun, really strong sense of humor. They attract others with their wit and their humor, and they have a strong natural ability to focus on the big picture. They don't get tangled in the weeds. They're a born entertainer and leader. They're inspiring, direct, straightforward, and honest. Very open. They're driven by an underlying passion for freedom and independence, especially freedoms of movement and self-expression, or speech. And they may possess a natural flair for writing and storytelling. There's an emphasis on energy and communication involving siblings, neighbors, and those in our local community or daily work environment. Allies may be changing as the truth is revealed under pressure. In the shadow, this energy, both Sun and Mars in Sagittarius, can lack staying power, which may manifest via commitment issues. Being ruled by Jupiter, it can be prone to overindulging, which can contribute to excess weight gain through age, especially toward the bottom half. Watch for rebelling against growing up, aka Peter Pan syndrome, due to viewing adulthood as an infringement upon one's personal freedoms. I think the entire Pluto in Sagittarius, Generation Z, born after my generation, can relate to this Peter Pan syndrome. Mercury in Sagittarius. So we have Mercury at 24 degrees Sagittarius in the third and final decan of Sagittarius. We'll spend a moment to talk about what that means to have Mercury, the planet that rules our logical, aware, conscious minds, how we communicate and how we think, how we learn, in this third and final decan of Sagittarius. This decan is ruled by Jupiter with sub-ruler the Sun. So you'll have some Leo undertones to the energy here. The key word is intuition. This is also the location of the galactic center, which remains pretty much fixed at 27 degrees Sagittarius. Teaching and writing really beckon this decan of Sagittarius, which enjoys a natural gift or flair for leadership and a magnetizing personality. They often have a charming talent for making others laugh. Mercury in Sagittarius is first and foremost focused on the pursuits of freedom, especially as they relate to self-expression and movement. It does not tolerate any perceived infringements on these freedoms. So we may see themes of censorship and control and influence of the media come up at this time. Gemini energy. So let's specifically talk about Moon in Gemini energy, which I'm a natal Moon in Gemini, so I'm the perfect person to deliver this. Gemini is immutable, aka changeable or adaptable air sign, with air involving the mind and Gemini being ruled by Mercury. Intellect, curiosity, communication, interpersonal interactions, information gathering, information organizing, and disseminating. It is highly sociable. I often joke that a Gemini, especially a Moon in Gemini or Mars in Gemini, could talk to a wall and have a great time. Gemini energy makes friends, as I often have, at concerts, waiting in line for shows. And as the second sign in the zodiac, Gemini is naturally childlike, embodied by its curiosity and high energy. I have both my natal Moon and Mars in Gemini, and I can tell you firsthand that stimulants are absolutely not necessary for many Mercury and Uranus influenced energies. I share this pattern, Moon and Mars in Gemini, with John Party. This is an especially interesting connection because as I did my reflection on where I was on June 18th, 2023, under that Gemini new moon, 26 degrees Gemini, well, I was watching John Party live in Wildwood, New Jersey, on a beach, recovering from CMA Fest in Nashville the week prior, back-to-back music festivals. Yes, that was ambitious. Yes, it was exhausting. Yes, I enjoyed sitting to watch John Party on the beach this weekend under that new moon in Gemini energy, and I find myself sharing this connection under today's full moon in Gemini video. Special shout out to you, John Party. Hope you're having a wonderful full moon. Talk about full circle. Gemini. The glyph for Gemini is the Roman numeral 2, representing Gemini's capacity for duality, an ability to connect or balance shadow with light. Gemini calls us to first bring awareness to the existence of our shadow side so that we can work with it rather than avoid it, repress it, or work against it. How do we work with and balance our shadow with our light? Let's talk about the story of the twins Castor and Pollux. The Dioscuri were the twins Castor and Pollux. They were a set of twins birthed by Leda, Queen of Sparta. While Castor was fathered by Leda's husband, Tyndareus, Pollux was actually fathered by Zeus, making Pollux an immortal demigod, much like Hercules or Achilles, while Castor was mortal. The two appear in many myths and adventures alongside their sisters. You might be more familiar with Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, but towards the end of their journeys, when Castor was murdered, Pollux so grieved his half-brother twin that he begged Zeus to split his gift of immortality between himself, Pollux, and his twin, Castor. The two were reunited as the constellation Gemini, which translates from Latin, was borrowed from Greek, as the plural, the twins. Once Zeus split Pollux's immortality, the two became part-time gods. vowing to split or share their time, their duties, between the gods in Olympus, Mount Olympus, representing higher self, higher consciousness, and Hades in the underworld, representing the sub or unconscious parts of self that we repress or allow to remain in the shadow. And they report directly to Mercury, the planet of logic, communication, our conscious minds, ruling over energies of Virgo and Gemini, the twins, with Mercury being Hermes, the messenger god responsible for delivering messages between Olympus and the underworld, the higher self, higher consciousness, and the sub or unconscious, the shadow. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, who is Hermes. In Greek mythology, the messenger god who delivered messages between the gods in Olympus, the higher self, higher consciousness, and Hades, lord of the underworld, representing shadow, unconsciousness, repressed parts of self that we don't want to face. Gemini energy incarnated to disseminate knowledge, be it through verbal or spoken communication or writing. Gemini has a fraternal twin sister sign, Virgo, that is also ruled by Mercury. Virgo is more known for its analytical nature, its ability to synthesize and organize that data, while Gemini is more known for its ability to make connections. Gemini moon is a master manifester. When fully balanced and empowered, it simply thinks, writes, and speaks things into existence. This is why it's imperative for people with Gemini energy to be impeccable with their words. I'm referencing the 4 agreements, because words are spells that carry tremendous power and have consequences strong enough to burn bridges. Being human is all about learning to be more aware or conscious of our thoughts, their power, and our power to change our thoughts. And it's about learning to be less reactive by being more intentional and self-aware. No other animal or creature that we know of is capable of doing that. With great power comes great responsibility. Gemini in shadow can be prone to using the word for gossip, but be wary because what comes around goes around. This Gemini moon, this full moon in Gemini, is answering to Mercury, and Mercury is in Sagittarius, which affects the expression of the energy. Mercury, which rules our collective conscious awareness, our logical analytical minds, in Sagittarius, blends intelligence with an ideal. We may find ourselves more interested in travel, foreign languages, foreign affairs, learning through people who differ from ourselves, philosophies, and religions at this time. Mercury isn't the most comfortable in the sign of Sagittarius, however. While it has a tremendous grasp on the big picture, it easily overlooks the details, which is what Mercury, Virgo, and Gemini are known for. And this is where Sagittarius and Gemini can find balance through one another. Mercury in Sagittarius at times has trouble being clear and concise. We may collectively feel as though we're in a fog or daze. And this full moon also involves a square to Neptune, so we're experiencing confusion and an overall feeling of a lack of clarity. With Mars also in Sagittarius, this is similar to having Mars in the 9th house, like me. Mars is the planet that rules our masculine, pursuing, or yang energy, how we go after what we want. In Sagittarius, this is big, idealistic, and outspoken energy that needs to be channeled or focused onto clearly defined goals or a passion topic or project that it can see through to mastery. Otherwise, it may lose focus or get distracted. It's a luck magnet, so it attracts options and opportunity. And with that can come overwhelm from not being able to choose any one. We're motivated to preserve our freedoms of self-expression and movement, and we're outspoken. Mars in Sagittarius can be torn by conflicting desires or experience, like we said, an overwhelm of options, due to the opportunities it naturally attracts with a generally positive outlook. The sun here creates a spotlight of energy and focus for us as a collective, and in close conjunction with Mars, both of them opposite the moon, things are heating up, resulting in a high climax of energy that can leave us feeling as though we're between a rock and a hard place. Let's explore what I think is so special about this full moon. It's happening on a Monday, which is the day of the week named after the moon, aka the moon's day. Moon in Gemini answers to the planet Mercury, which means it involves information gathering, communication, gossip, or our immediate community, neighbors, siblings, the media, journalism, marketing, education, and other Gemini themes. 4 degrees is a degree point associated with Cancer energy, so we're also focused on home and family, our overall feeling of security, especially on a national level. This is a degree point that is related to birthright and nationalism, that has everything to do with national security and borders. The Sun, 4 degrees Sagittarius, is in the first decan of Sagittarius, meaning its ruler and sub-ruler are both Jupiter. The Moon, 4 degrees Gemini, is in the first decan of Gemini, meaning its ruler and sub-ruler are both Mercury. This is 8 of Swords energy in tarot, which can get very tangled in the weeds and details, and it can also get bogged down by things like anxiety and overthinking. It can mentally spiral, and because Gemini Moon is a master manifester, it can end up manifesting negative consequences in its reality due to feeding its insecurities, anxieties, and fears. So you really have to rein in on that under this energy. Fear and insecurity often disguise themselves as worry and anxiety. So remember to lean into self-compassion. The Sun in Sagittarius answers to Jupiter in Taurus, which answers to Venus in Libra, aligning with the South Node. We'll get into that a bit later on. Jupiter in Taurus is currently not in harsh aspect to anything, and in a trine to Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, which is helping us heal unconscious blocks to abundance and opportunity. If we wind up tangled in the weeds, worried about the little things, we miss out on the big picture and opportunities that are coming in for us because we're not ready to receive them. Venus and the South Node in Libra aligning. Look for run-ins with past life people from your past, and opportunities to clear out karmic cycles or patterns, especially those involving people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, and codependency. These karmic lessons will include tests to our values, self-confidence, and finances. This full moon in Gemini involves a grand mutable cross featuring Sagittarius, Sun, and Mars opposite Gemini Moon, squaring Saturn, 0 degrees Pisces, recently went direct, the beginning of November 4th, which is opposite Black Moon Lilith, 6 degrees Virgo. Mutable crosses and squares involve conflict and stress. So we're facing a challenge related to uncertainty or indecision and or a need to adapt to changing circumstances. Mars and Sun aligning in Sagittarius, opposite Gemini Moon. So the Mars and Sun aligned is all about taking risks in the sign of Sagittarius. It's high energy, it's optimistic, it's focused on freedom of speech and movement, and speaking out and up about something, even though it may be difficult. Opposite Gemini Moon, we may be experiencing too many irons in the fire. We can swirl from confusion as a result. The Moon in Gemini is like an octopus. It has a tendency to spread itself very thinly with a very busy, overpacked schedule, which can cause it to feel exactly like that, an octopus pulled in 8 different directions simultaneously. Remember to practice your breath work. Get to that yoga mat, meditate, practice Tai Chi, take a long walk outside with your dog or by yourself, preferably in nature, where you can sit alone with your thoughts. With Gemini Moon's planetary ruler Mercury weakened in Sagittarius, especially at 24 degrees, a degree point in degree theory that's associated with Pisces, where Mercury is not particularly comfortable. Mercury in Sagittarius can get scattered or lose focus. It does best when focused on a passion project or topic that it can see through to mastery. So remember this when balancing the energy. We have this opposition squaring off against Saturn, 0 degrees Pisces, opposite Black Moon Lilith, 6 degrees Virgo. Saturn opposite Black Moon Lilith, particularly in these signs, Pisces and Virgo, and Mars square Saturn specifically, can bring frustration, resistance, restrictions, and blocks. With this placement, the harder we push or pursue or chase something, the more resistance we'll face in attaining it. With Mars, a malefic planet in traditional astrology that delivers karma via separation, illness, injury, accident, war. At 2 degrees, a Taurus degree, this karma could be related to our personal finances, the overall economy, and or banking systems. Watch for difficulty relaxing, leading to conflicts and burnout. With Saturn and in Pisces, opposite Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, watch for autoimmune flare-ups, skin and gut flare-ups, and relapses with addiction. This full moon involves, just like the new moon in Gemini 6 months prior, an exact mutable square between Neptune in rulership 24 degrees Pisces, this time Mercury 24 degrees Sagittarius. Mercury at 24 degrees is a Pisces degree in degree astrology. And Mercury square Neptune can bring brain fog, lack of clarity, people may not be telling the full truth, or what you're hearing or reading isn't the full story with the moon in Gemini. Be sure to remember, with the moon in Gemini, be sure to remember that there are 2 sides to every story, possibly even 3 sides. There's each person's unique perspective, and then there's the objective third-party truth. We are also approaching a Mercury retrograde that will begin 8 degrees Capricorn and end, there it is again, 22 degrees. There it is again, 22 degrees Sagittarius. This is where delusions and illusions abound, misunderstandings, scams, and many things are lost in translation. You can anticipate travel delays and increases in religious and cultural conflicts. This is due to numerous harsh aspects to Mercury during its retrograde. Mercury squares off to Neptune and approaches a trine to the North Node in Aries, bringing fated communication that will feel out of our control. When Mercury retrogrades from December 13th to January 1st, be sure to mind your mouth, your speed, and your impulsivity, perhaps even your caffeine intake. Look out for border issues that may come to the forefront of our focus. Slow down, slow your roll, and remember not to quit on a bad day. Please don't rush into any action or decision in the heat of a moment or emotion. It's okay to pause, to breathe, and or meditate and think about something before you take action on it. This full moon in Gemini also involves a conjunction between Venus and the South Node in the late degrees of Libra. The exact alignment happens just after the full moon at, here it is again, 22 degrees Libra. Venus is strong in Libra, one of the signs it rules. I am a Libra stellium. I have my Sun, Mercury, ascendant, and because my ascendant is in Libra, my ruling planet Venus, which is in Libra, in the 12th house, is very, very strong. This is a Venus year in numerology. If you add the digits 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3, you get 7, a number associated with both Venus and Libra, and balanced interpersonal relationships. Venus had its first retrograde to begin and end in the sign of Leo since the 1700s this summer, with Venus affecting our values, our overall sense of self-worth and value, and our relationships. And with Jupiter and Uranus in a Venus-ruled sign Taurus in 2023, aligning also at 22 degrees in early 2024, spring 2024. This has a lot to do with our finances, resources, access to food. Venus aligning with the South Node in Libra and involving a square to Pluto, 28 degrees Capricorn, can have a profound impact on our love lives. The combination of Mars square Saturn and the cardinal T-square between the North Node in Aries and opposite the South Node in Libra, squaring and focusing on Pluto at 28 degrees, the millionaire's degree, Capricorn, can bring issues with self-assertion, which can cause stress and disputes to play out in our interpersonal relationships, which can bring out underlying control issues, manipulation, and power struggles within those interpersonal relationships. Any dynamics where there's an imbalance, where one and or the other relies on or depends on the other in an unhealthy way. Watch for underlying fears and insecurities about not being liked, loved, and or appreciated coming bubbling to the surface as manipulative jealousy or resentment. Look out for opportunities to heal karmic patterns involving people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, and codependency. Also look out for defining yourself based on your relationship and or other people's perceptions and expectations of you. This is a trap that Libra can fall into. Your happiness does not depend on others. Be very careful not to give your power away or to fall into the trappings of people-pleasing. Venus in Libra is naturally charming and sociable, so connections come easily. Friends, they come and they go. Either way, let them. The South Node aligning with Venus can bring opportunities to heal karmic cycles with past people. We're clearing out abandonment wounding and any generational patterns we may have absorbed in early childhood or throughout our upbringing or previous romantic relationships that now manifest in our current interpersonal relationship dynamics. With abandonment wounding, the ego wants you to believe that you cannot endure or survive without that person's approval. But don't feed that fear. Venus must learn to, first and foremost, comfort for the self, Aries, in order to love others in balanced, equal ways. Libra can always balance itself by looking to its opposite, Aries. You may experience run-ins with soulmates and people from previous lives or past people, karmic people. People may be experiencing karma for over-reliance or over-dependence on others for love, money, status, job, access to wealth, access to an inheritance, recognition, social status, approval, or other earthly material things. Remember, we're trying to be that eagle, which transcends above and beyond the earthly material limitations. The opposition with the North Node in Aries, this is all happening because we're meant to foster more self-reliance and independence rather than depend on external sources for validation and approval. I'd also like to mention that this Mercury is in its pre-retrograde shadow, with Mercury retrograde coming up in a couple weeks on December 13th, from December 13th to January 1st, from 8 degrees Capricorn to 22 degrees Sagittarius. So this 24 degree Sagittarius degree point is covered in the territory of the Mercury retrograde. Others have a right to form their own opinions. Please hold space for that. But be on the lookout for things being lost in translation. There's a huge focus and emphasis here on the power of the media to both inspire and influence or manipulate via propaganda. We're experiencing a strong need for communication and an ability to express ourselves freely. So you may see an emphasis on freedom of speech, censorship, strikes, protests, and other eruptions. The square to Saturn means we're pushing back against authority and old ways of doing things.